If I sit down, it's going to hurt. Ava had whispered those words so softly they were almost carried away by the breeze. But Layla heard them clearly, so clearly that her heart skipped a beat. In a dining room filled with clinking silverware and laughter, no one else paid attention to that whisper. Ava was only 6. All the adults around just shook their heads and said, "She's acting up again." But Layla couldn't brush it off. She had seen how her daughter flinched when someone touched her shoulder. She had noticed how Ava slept with her shoes on as if always ready to flee. The family believed that shared blood was enough to bury the truth beneath layers of pumpkin pie and cranberry sauce. But Layla no longer believed that. When she found a scribbled drawing hidden in Ava's notebook, her hands trembled so hard she nearly dropped her phone. The shaky crayon strokes were enough to tell a story no words ever could. She dialed 911. Her voice cracked like cold wind on the porch. "Something's happening to my daughter. Something serious." And that Thanksgiving night, meant to be filled with blessings and laughter, turned into a courtroom no one had planned for. But Layla knew if she didn't act right then, there might never be another chance. The house where Layla had grown up hadn't changed, the faded yellow wallpaper peeling off the walls, the scent of cinnamon tangled with old room spray. But this time everything felt smaller, sharper, as if the walls had heard too much silence and grown thorns because of it. Layla's mother Ruth gave her a quick hug and pulled away her smile as faint as powder. "You look tired. Long drive." But what she really meant was, "Don't disrupt the holiday." Her sister Vanessa was arranging the table, adjusting crystal glasses under the glowing chandelier. She smiled with the kind of politeness people reserve for telemarketers. Ava clung to Layla's hand, her eyes scanning the room. She didn't know anyone. Uncle Ethan laughed too loudly. Grandma Marjorie kept pointing out seats, and little cousin Carla was darting around the table chasing a gravy boat. The long wooden table their father had built now sat in silence. The blessings once shared over it had become quiet wrinkles in the grain. When Ava was told to go sit with the 2 younger kids at the far end, she hesitated. Her fingers clutched the edge of her sweater. Layla moved to pull out a chair, but Ava leaned in close. "Mom, if I sit, it's going to hurt." The room froze for a second. The words were too fragile to survive, but powerful enough to tear the air apart. A fork clattered to the floor. Laughter cracked mid-breath. Then came a scoffing voice from Uncle Ethan's direction. "Oh, great! Another one of this family's little dramas." Layla bent down her hands, suddenly ice cold. She whispered, "Does it hurt now, sweetheart?" Ava only nodded, eyes brimming. No one asked. No one helped. The clinking of silverware resumed, cranberry sauce still passed hand to hand as if nothing had happened. Layla gripped her daughter's hand. "Let's go to the bathroom for a minute, okay?" She felt every gaze prickling her back like pins. But Layla knew sometimes being a mother wasn't about being accepted, it was about standing up. Behind the bathroom door, the scent of lavender soap couldn't mask the rising panic. Layla gently helped Ava pull down her tights, but the little girl flinched, her whole body recoiled, and then Layla saw it. Down Ava's inner thighs were faint red marks. Not fresh, but not old enough to be dismissed. Marks that didn't come from playground falls or clumsy tumbles. Layla felt the air leave her lungs. Her throat tasted metallic. She had volunteered at women's shelters in college. She knew what this was. She knew the signs. But knowing is different when it's your own child. Ava looked up at her lips trembling. "Did I do something bad?" "No, sweetheart," Layla said, barely able to speak. "You did nothing wrong. Nothing." She pulled her daughter into her arms, counting her heartbeats, willing herself to stay calm. When they stepped out into the hallway, Ruth's eyes met hers, sharp, unreadable. "Was that necessary?" her mother asked, voice flat. "Dinner's getting cold. Ava's not feeling well." "We're going home," Layla said, voice quiet but resolute. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Ethan smirked into his wine glass. Layla gently settled Ava onto the small couch near the foyer and tucked a stuffed panda into her daughter's arms. "If you feel scared, squeeze him tight." "I'm right here, okay?" Then she walked outside to the porch. Her hands were shaking. Each tap of her finger on the phone screen felt like breaking glass. But she did it anyway. She had to. 911, what's your emergency? Layla's voice cracked, but the words came out. "I think my daughter's being abused." And minutes later, the sound of tires crunching gravel broke the silence. Blue and red lights flickered across the aging porch. A knock on the door followed. The truth, the one everyone else had ignored, had just stepped inside. The emergency room smelled like antiseptic and forgotten apologies. Ava lay quietly on the examination bed, holding her stuffed panda like a shield. Layla sat beside her, gripping her daughter's tiny hand, trying not to show her own shaking. The nurse smiled too easily. The doctor spoke too quickly. And when the examination ended, his tone dropped cool, professional, detached. No visible signs of trauma. Nothing conclusive. You may want to consult a pediatric therapist. Layla blinked. "You saw the marks, didn't you?" He shrugged. "Could be from scratching. Children are imaginative." It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it, like Ava's body was a puzzle not worth solving. That night, Layla paced the living room, her phone full of unanswered calls from her sister and cold texts from her mother. She's always been sensitive. Don't let one off comment ruin the family. You're blowing this out of proportion. The word family suddenly felt like a brick used more for building walls than bridges. Ava stood silently in the doorway, pajamas wrinkled, clutching her panda. "Mom? Do you believe me?" Layla turned, dropped to her knees, and looked her daughter in the eyes. "With all my heart." She knew now silence wasn't just complicity, it was protection for the wrong people. And she wouldn't stay silent anymore. The next morning, she filed a report with Child Protective Services. She handed over the drawing, described the bruises, Ava's whisper, the Thanksgiving dinner. The caseworker looked exhausted before she even began. But Layla didn't flinch, because this wasn't just about Ava anymore. It was about every child told to sit still, to be quiet, to be polite even while bleeding inside. 3 days later, Ava sat in a room painted soft blue, filled with plush toys and picture books. But nothing could warm the air inside. A two-way mirror reflected Layla's trembling hands as she watched from behind the glass. On the other side, a therapist knelt gently before Ava. "Can you tell me what happened, sweetie? Anything at all?" Ava clutched her panda tight, looking down. Her lips barely moved. He said it was a game." The therapist's voice remained calm. "Who said that?" "Uncle Jake." Layla's knees nearly buckled behind the wall. Ava kept going, voice no louder than a breeze. "He said I was special. But it hurt. I didn't like it. I wanted to tell. But he said Grandma would be mad." The room went silent. Behind the glass, a CPS agent scribbled furiously. Layla could hear nothing but her daughter's soft voice and her own pounding heart. When the session ended, Ava was exhausted, not from play, but from truth. She curled into her mother's arms like a child seeking shelter from a storm she hadn't asked to walk through. That night, Layla was asked to testify. Not in court yet, but before the family. Vanessa had called. "You need to explain yourself. You can't just accuse people like that." So Layla went. The family was gathered again in the same house. Same table, same chandelier. But the warmth had turned sour. "Do you know what you're doing to us?" Vanessa snapped. To Mom, Layla stood voice steady. "No." "The question is, do you know what you let happen to Ava?" Ruth said nothing, just shook her head. She's always been a dramatic child. "You were too." It was like screaming into a pillow. But Layla looked around the room and knew she was no longer asking for belief. She was demanding accountability. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of unanswered calls, legal forms, and restless sleep. Ava stopped humming, stopped drawing. Her laughter, once light as bubbles, had vanished. Layla tried everything art therapy bedtime stories baking together. But there was a stillness in Ava now that couldn't be sugar-coated. One morning while folding laundry, Layla found a sketch tucked inside Ava's notebook. It showed a stick figure girl sitting on a bench, legs stiff, eyes drawn as empty circles. Behind her, a tall figure loomed dark scribbles for a face. And in the corner, 2 others with their backs turned, labeled Mom and Grandma. Layla's breath caught in her chest. That night, she called the lead investigator again. "I know you're backed up, but my daughter just drew this. She's trying to tell us more." The voice on the other end softened. "Bring it in. We'll reopen the interview." When Ava returned to the center, she sat in the same soft blue room. This time she didn't hesitate. "He came into Grandma's room after the game. I had to be quiet. Or he said Mommy would disappear." She pulled out her stuffed panda and pointed to the left leg. "He hurt me there. It turned purple. But I covered it, so no one would ask." Layla cried silently behind the mirror, not just because of the pain, but because her daughter had learned to hide it so well. By the end of the session, the therapist looked grim. "We need to contact the district attorney. This is no longer just a protective case. This is criminal." For the first time, someone believed them fully. No hesitation, no deflection, just action. That evening, as Layla tucked Ava into bed, her daughter whispered, "Did I do good today?" Layla kissed her forehead, voice thick with tears. "You were brave. You told the truth. And now, we'll make sure no one can ever hurt you again." Winter arrived quietly as if afraid to knock. Snow settled on the roof of Layla's small rental home like a white veil masking the turbulence inside. Outside, everything looked still. Inside, everything was waiting. Despite the open case and Ava's recorded statement, weeks dragged on without arrest. The system was moving but slowly, like wading through mud while holding your child on your back. Each day, Layla checked her phone, waiting for a call from the DA, from the detective, from anyone. But silence always answered first. Ava was back in school part-time. She rarely spoke in class. The once colorful drawings she proudly hung on the fridge had faded into quiet pencil sketches, doors, locks, empty beds. One evening, Layla stood by the window watching her daughter outside. Ava was building a snow angel, but she never smiled. Her movements were mechanical, careful. Vanessa had stopped speaking to her completely. Ruth sent only one message. "I hope you're proud. You've destroyed this family." But Layla wasn't proud. She was exhausted and terrified, because the one person who hadn't called, hadn't denied anything, was Jake. He had disappeared. No social media, no contact. Not even his lawyer had made a public statement. It was as if he knew the storm was coming, and he was waiting for the lightning to strike first. That night, Layla double-checked the locks. Ava was asleep, curled under 3 blankets, the stuffed panda still clutched to her chest like armor. Layla whispered into the silence. "We're almost there, baby. Almost there." But even she didn't know how close the reckoning truly was. It was a Tuesday morning when the knock finally came. Layla was making waffles, the scent of cinnamon and maple filling the kitchen, a small ritual of normalcy they'd created together. Ava sat nearby, coloring quietly, her panda perched beside her plate like a silent dinner guest. Then came the knock, firm, deliberate. Layla opened the door to find 2 detectives, serious but kind. "We've secured a warrant," one said. "Thanks to Ava's last session and your persistence. Jake Carter will be arrested today." Layla didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." That afternoon, Layla received a call from the district attorney's office. They wanted her to prepare for Ava's testimony, and they wanted to include Layla's own statements about the family's history of silencing and denial. Ava wouldn't have to face him in court directly. The therapist had recommended using recorded testimony, but Layla, she would be on the stand. She spent that night going through old photos, Thanksgiving snapshots, birthday parties, backyard cookouts, searching for the shadows she hadn't seen before. There they were, Jake's hand too low on Ava's back. The way Ruth always looked away when Ava squirmed. The forced smiles. The silence had been there the whole time, hiding in plain sight. Layla packed a small bag, a clean dress shirt, a copy of Ava's drawing now laminated, a piece of art and evidence all in one, and her daughter's panda just in case Ava needed it before the hearing. The morning of the arraignment, as snow fell softly outside the courthouse, Ava reached for her mother's hand. "Will he go away forever?" Layla knelt down and looked her in the eyes. "He'll never hurt you again. That's what matters most." Ava nodded, her grip tightening, and together they walked through the courthouse doors into the light, into the fight, into the truth. The courtroom smelled of old wood and colder memories. Layla sat on the witness stand, hands resting firmly in her lap. Across from her, Jake Carter avoided eye contact, his once confident posture now reduced to quiet fidgeting behind his lawyer. The prosecutor began. "Mrs. Bennett, can you tell us what led to this case?" Layla's voice trembled at first, but each word found strength in memory. "I believed in family. I believed they'd protect my daughter like I would. I was wrong." She unfolded Ava's drawing, laminated, trembling only slightly in her grip, and held it up for the jury. She drew this when no one else would listen. When everyone told me she was exaggerating or imagining things, this was her truth. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. One juror covered their mouth. The defense tried to object, claimed emotional manipulation, but the judge allowed it. Because sometimes the only thing stronger than evidence is the truth drawn in a child's hand. That afternoon, a forensic pediatrician testified, confirmed Ava's symptoms, confirmed Layla's instincts, confirmed that someone had indeed failed to stop what had been happening for far too long. Then came the most unexpected moment. Vanessa, Layla's sister, took the stand. "I didn't want to believe it," she said softly. "But I saw the signs. I saw Ava change. I just didn't want to cause trouble." She looked at Jake, then down at her hands. "I was a coward, but not anymore." It was the first time in years Layla had seen honesty from her sister, and in that moment a small corner of her broken trust shifted. Not forgiven, but acknowledged. When the court adjourned for the day, the prosecutor whispered to Layla, "You've done more than enough. Ava doesn't need to speak. You spoke for her." Layla stepped out into the crisp air, the sky overcast but calm. Ava was waiting with her therapist bundled in a coat panda in hand. The little girl looked up. "Did we win?" Layla smiled, kneeling. "We told the truth. That's how you win against silence." The verdict came on a Thursday. Jake Carter was found guilty on all charges: aggravated child abuse, endangering the welfare of a minor, and coercion. The courtroom didn't erupt. There was no applause, just the sound of justice finally quietly arriving. Layla closed her eyes and let a single tear fall, not out of sadness but release. Ava wasn't in the courtroom that day. She was at home building a cardboard fort with her therapist, drawing again, singing again, living again. Later that evening, Layla picked her up and brought her to the same park where they used to go before everything changed. Ava ran ahead, arms stretched, her scarf trailing behind her like a ribbon of freedom. Layla sat on the bench watching her daughter reclaim the world, one step, one smile, one deep breath at a time. Vanessa showed up unexpectedly. No makeup, no pretenses. "I'm sorry," she said simply, "for not protecting her, for not standing with you sooner." Layla didn't say anything at first. She looked out toward Ava, then back at the woman who used to be her closest friend. "You still have time to stand with her now," Layla replied. They sat in silence, not the kind that suffocates, but the kind that makes room for something new. The sun dipped low, bathing the park in golden light. Ava ran over, climbed into her mother's lap, and whispered, "I'm safe now, right?" Layla wrapped her arms around her and whispered back, "Yes, baby, you're safe. And no one will ever take that from you again." The truth had cost them everything: comfort, reputation, family ties. But it had given them something greater: safety, dignity, and a future built not on secrets but sunlight.